o'clock, so
Recording in progress.
we will get started. Welcome to the June 1st meeting of the Government Operations Committee. Welcome to June. It looks like that screen isn't working, but that's all right. I do have a couple changes to the agenda. Our commissioners from the Board of Elections are here, so I'm going to add them in probably right after administration. And also, Dominic let me know he will be coming in later in the meeting, so he'll do his presentation about the language access services later in his report. And are there other changes? Mike?
When the county clerk's here, I'd like to bring up a matter with her, if I may.
Okay, yep. And Dan has asked to be excused today, so he will not be here. Comments from the public? Right. Minutes from May 4th. Can I get somebody to move those? Rich, seconded by Susan. Any questions, comments, changes? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. And we will go right to administration. Morning.
Good morning, thank you, Amanda. We have first a resolution regarding ITS that's under administration. I'd like to.
Okay, can somebody move that for me? Rich, seconded by Susan. This is the budget adjustment and contingent fund request, information technology service systems. Questions, Rich?
I know to say what, why was it spent in 2022? How? I was totally confused by this.
So my understanding, it's more or less a clerical error, and it's a year-end cleanup for 2022. There was funding that was not recognized in 2022, and then when targets were set in 2022, the target wasn't increased for GIS, and there was fringe costs were not included. So this is just essentially a year-end cleanup.
Was the money spent in 2022?
I believe so, yes.
I guess I don't understand how the issue is here in June of 23 if the money was going out the door and it wasn't in the budget.
My understanding is it was in under different accounts. So it was recognized under a different account, and it needed to be put elsewhere.
Okay, but we had allocated the money just in the wrong place.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
I think that makes sense. Other questions? It is a little confusing. Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous, thank you.
And then next is a strategic planning process update. As many of you are aware, we have launched our strategic planning process. We've received a grant to enable us to do this through the Appalachian Regional Commission. We have a contract with a firm, Barry Dunn. Our colleagues from Barry Dunn are with us this morning. We have Michelle Kennedy and Karen Wichard, who have a brief PowerPoint presentation to provide an overview of the strategic planning process. So I think I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Good morning. Thank you for the time today. We want to just spend a few minutes with you, orienting you to the project. I'm Michelle Kennedy. I'm a manager in Barry Dunn's local government practice group. I'm the project manager, bringing about 25 years of local government strategic planning experience to the table. Really happy to be helping you with with this process. And my colleague Karen.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us today.
All right, we have just a few slides we're going to share. And please let us know if you have questions as we go through. So quick agenda for today. We're going to hear a little bit about any experience you have with strategic planning, go through what a plan is, why it's important, give you a high-level overview of how we're going to conduct the project, roles and responsibilities of the different players, and then a preliminary visioning discussion, although it will be short since we only have about 10 minutes with you today. This is our team. As I mentioned, I'm the project manager. Seth Hedstrom is our principal. He has been overseeing our local government practice group for a number of years. You have today with me, Karen. We also have Charlene Kirangosi on our project. Christine Moses, who is our DEI expert. She's been working already on the project. Shannon is another facilitator. She's also a former local government finance director. And then our research analyst, Maddie Powers. So that's our team. We also have a whole bench of folks that have specialized expertise in various aspects, including public safety, parks, recreation, and libraries, public works, that we can draw upon if we need them for this project.
Thanks, Michelle. As we get started today, briefly, we wanted to get your pulse on what your experience is with strategic planning. What have y'all done in the past, either in your role with the county or in other areas of your expertise as people walking around in different components of your life? And I'll pause there and see if I can see any responses.
Yeah. Anyone want to share? Rich?
In my prior life at a large corporation, we did strategic planning all the time.
Susan?
Thank you, Rich. Anybody?
As a director of the Tompkins County Public Library, we were required by the state to have a strategic plan every 5 years. And in my previous positions as a librarian at SUNY Binghamton and Cornell, there, like Rich said, there's always strategic planning.
Yep. Mike?
Very good.
Mike?
I liaison with our community college, and they do a lot of strategic planning.
Right, and I also have participated in a number, including the library and cooperative extension, so yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Anyone else want to share? I have a hard time seeing who else in the room before we move along. This is great, deep, rich experience that will be very beneficial as we go through this process together.
And we hope to make the process fun, because strategic planning is something that people learn to dread, and we aim to not have it be something that you dread.
Exactly.
That's good, thank you.
All right. So the really good news is that deep experience I heard in the room, you all are well on your way to understanding fundamentally what is a strategic plan. We know it's our North Star, really our constellation for where we want to be as a destination. Y'all have done strategic plans before. You know, sometimes the journey and the route changes, but really where are we trying to go at the end point is the purpose of the plan. And then it also communicates that clear vision and goal so that everyone is rowing in the same direction, from the board to the staff. It provides that alignment that really helps the county achieve its long-term goals and visions. So the slide that you see in front of you, it's once again, the strategic plan is the what. What is the county trying to prioritize and focus on? And then the how is really in the implementation plan that the staff will work on after the strategic plan is completed. And then finally, you'll see number 3 at the bottom. It's really excellent for government, as you all have worked in this sector in other areas of strategic planning, for the transparency piece to help people understand where you're trying to go and the why.
So this is a high-level overview of our process. We've spent quite a bit of time already in project initiation and management with the project management team on the county side, really trying to lay out a schedule that's going to work, put in the proper milestones, make sure that the different stakeholders that we're going to be engaging are engaged at the right time, and engaging them in a very efficient way. We've also been spending quite a bit of time up front identifying the stakeholder groups that we really want to engage in this process, working with Dr. Moses, our DEI expert, who's going to be, weighing in and also helping to engage those groups that are sometimes underrepresented in the conversation. So we've really been in stage one, setting up a good approach and a good process for this. We're getting ready to move into phase two, which is community and stakeholder engagement. We'll be spending a lot of time here conducting individual interviews, group interviews. We'll be doing some on-site, community forums, engaging members of the community in the visioning process. We'll be conducting surveys. We have a virtual engagement platform that we'll be employing to gather input. We'll tap all of your social media platforms to get input, really trying to use every channel available to gather input from the community and stakeholders to inform the process. The final product of that phase will be what we call an environmental scan, which is a really compelling set of data presented visually that is used to inform plan development, used as the foundation for plan development. It really sets the stage by creating a common understanding of what the current environment looks like, what's coming down the road, what can we anticipate for the county. We'll present that at the very beginning of phase three to the different groups that we're going to be working with to construct the plan. That plan development process will include different roles for different groups that are going to be helping Barry Dunn to put it together. We will create a plan that is, as Karen mentioned, North Star guidance, but also actionable. A strategic plan, as you know, will sit on a shelf if it does not have concrete strategies and actions that can be carried out to make progress towards whatever goals and priorities you set. And then when we finish the plan, as Karen mentioned, we will move into supporting you in implementation planning. We'll be facilitating you using a good template that we have to put an implementation plan together so you can have the stage set for success and you'll really start to get traction for your plan. This is a high-level overview of our facilitation methodology. We use a specific consensus-based facilitation methodology devised by the Institute for Cultural Affairs. This methodology has been around for almost 4 decades. It's used for community building and strategic planning. We are certified in this. All of the values that you see there in the circles are what are embedded in this methodology. It's proven. It creates shared ownership in a plan. It creates an actionable plan. It creates a plan that has a way to easily measure your performance and monitor your progress. So we're really excited to bring that methodology to you. It's especially effective in engaging also diverse groups of stakeholders, particularly when there might be divergent or competing interests or points of view, which is often the case when we do these planning processes.
Great, so a little bit more about the ingredients and components of our process as we drive towards the strategic plan end result. First is the stakeholder and community engagement. And we've been doing a lot of deep work with your staff to come up with a group of stakeholders. Who should we talk to get the dreams and the hopes and the aspirations of the residents of Tompkins County as we start the strategic planning process. So you'll see here a laundry list of bullets of the types of stakeholders we typically identify. And these will be broken into things like one-on-one interviews with folks like you guys, elected officials. We'll do community and forums, we'll do focus groups. Down at the bottom, you'll see that interviews with the stakeholders, the social pinpoint community engagement platform, which I'll talk about a little bit more on the next slide. We'll do community surveys, the forums. And we'll also look at other existing plans and demographic data to really get that broad input once again around what the community thinks and what their input is in the beginning stages of the plan. Another component of this work is making sure that we apply an equity lens so that all voices are part of the process and everyone participates using Dr. Moses's expertise. So this is an example of a social pinpoint site that I just mentioned that we did for the city of Redlands. What this is a standalone web landing page that allows the community to interact with the strategic planning process in some really critical ways. First, this is where we put all the surveys, the community surveys that we do, where, as Michelle said, we will work with your staff and your platforms to get the word out. Please come take a survey, provide your input from a quantitative standpoint about this community and what you would like to see for the future. There's also a component called the idea wall, which is a really neat open-ended form response where residents can go in, type open-ended answers, and then there's a social media component of where others can come in and rank and like and what others have said. So it provides a qualitative component to the stakeholder engagement as we build towards the environmental scan. As the plan development continues, we keep this site updated. So as we have community forums, we'll post information about those here. And then documents that make sense to share with the community as we go through the process will also live on this site. Finally, a component of this landing page on Social Pinpoint is an overview of what strategic planning is, frequently asked questions to help the community understand the process and why you're undertaking this important work. So Michelle mentioned the environmental scan. This is really the foundation of the strategic plan. It gives everybody the baseline information that is needed to get on the same page for current state of what the current challenges are in the environment, what the current positives are in the environment, so that you can start from a shared point to get to the shared vision of the strategic plan. And the underpinning of the environmental scan is the SWOT analysis. So this is your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. Y'all have experience with strategic planning, we just heard, so I'm sure y'all have done similar versions of this and other iterations in your past experience. But once again, this is the dive that gives us our current state that allows you all to be in a good place, both when you're doing your planning sessions, but also in the community forum. So a portion of the environmental scan, we present that in the community forum in the initial stage to get their feedback to help them as they provide the input. And then we update the environmental scan one more time and use that as part of your planning session. So that's the foundational elements that go into getting to the planning session that you all will have later this year.
Thanks, Karen. So key components of the plan, as we mentioned, the overall plan should lay out a North Star vision, where you're going so that everybody can row in the same direction. And then the key components are listed there. We want to make sure that you have a clear mission. Oftentimes we just review that. And oftentimes that doesn't change, or it might change with a word or two. But the key is to lay out a 5-year vision for the county that's achievable, but also aspirational, something that motivates people, but have it be concrete and clearly described so that it is achievable. We'll lay out some guiding principles, what the community can expect from the county as it carries out its activities, as it serves the community. Strategic goals and priorities, so a handful of very significant areas of focus, usually somewhere in the number between 4 and 6 areas of focus, and then clear 5-year goals to go with each of those priorities. And then very focused objectives. This is what we'll try to focus on in year 1, year 2, and then performance measures that measure the progress towards those specific focused objectives. We package this into a very visual, attractive document that you'd be proud to hand out in the community, that you would be proud to have on your website, and that captures, your brand identity and some of the essence of Tompkins County that your communities and your community members would recognize. So with that, and recognizing we want to honor the time frame that we have for this presentation, we would just love to hear any thoughts you have about opportunities or challenges you see in this process, and anything you want us to try to do to stretch the county in this process and creating a plan for the next 5 years.
All right, you want some answers?
Yes, please.
All right, I'm looking at my colleagues. Who wants to jump in with opportunities or challenges off the top of your head? Mike?
Possible response to an influx of migrants and also the homeless that we have.
Yep.
Definitely. I was thinking about the challenge of hiring folks who may need to move here and live in a very expensive location, and I know we've had some issues with that recently. So, yeah, and then retaining people if they can't afford to live here.
I would like to share with you that we are helping a number of clients with these very issues that you are describing. So we will definitely have some experience to offer from other communities that are grappling with these same challenges.
Any other thoughts? All right, we're being quiet today.
Probably a lot of things that we could say, but it's just kind of hard to get put on the spot right this second. And
Yeah, definitely.
We'll have plenty of time to talk with you as we unfold this process about the different issues, but we just wanted to get any guidance you had to give us at the very beginning as we start to engage in the community and stakeholder engagement phase of the project.
Sure. I think Susan had another thought.
Well, I'm a new legislator, just elected about 4 months ago, and I attended recently in my district, one of their civic association meetings, and it was very clear to me that there's confusion over what the county does and what the city does, because there was city council. So I found that really interesting. I expected a lot of questions, a lot of discussions. I didn't get a lot of questions about what the county does, even though it's broader, but the common council people were really put on the spot. So it was very interesting to see I'd like to know what they want from the county. That was one of the reasons I was really interested in attending that civic association. So,
yeah, I mean, knowing what the residents want, and listening to my colleagues over the years, I feel like there's some districts where people reach out to their legislator all the time, and other districts where there's not a peep. So. Hearing from residents is very important to me, and exactly what you said, Susan. I think people don't know what the county even does, so.
Yes, I think county government is less understood than city government in some of the special districts and jurisdictions. So these are great insights.
Yeah. Anything else, Rich?
I'd throw one more out there, which is that we have Cornell University and Ithaca College as large educational institutions in our community that have tremendous impact on not only the tax base, because they have so much non-taxable property, but they are major employers, and they participate with the city and the county in providing certain municipal services. So I think there's opportunities and challenges coming from that direction in our community.
Yeah, definitely.
We definitely want to consider them as a major stakeholder in this process. Thank you for that.
Other thoughts? Lisa?
Weigh in to say a few words. First of all, we have a steering committee that has been working and meeting very regularly with our colleagues at Barry Dunn. Amanda, as chair of this committee, and Shauna and Dan as chair and vice chair of the legislature are on that steering committee. And I've really appreciated Michelle and Karen and their colleagues' expertise in this area and working with a lot of municipal clients that can provide us with guidance on an approach to strategic planning in municipalities. They really get it. So that's very appreciated. I think that, and we're working on our stakeholder list, which could be hundreds and hundreds of people, but we're really trying to do our best to narrow that down now. But I also just wanted to say I'm very excited about this process, not only undertaking the process itself and the product that we hope to achieve with it, but that with the new software that we're implementing with the budget, it provides us the opportunity to tie in the outcomes that we're looking for with, the priorities that are identified with budgeting, and can really make the implementation something very real and something that we've been trying to do for a long time with results-based accountability measures and so forth. So, and then the last thing I'll say, I want to recognize Bridget Nugent in our office, who's acted as the point person in keeping everything moving along in this process, and together with our colleagues in the planning department have been devoting a lot of work to getting this off the ground. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I would also add that my understanding is that Barry Dunn will have an individual interview with each legislator. So
Yes.
you will have time, I think, in the next couple months, if I'm not correct.
That's right.
So they'll be reaching out. Each of us will have a chance to sit down. So think about these questions, and you'll have a chance to share your thoughts about these opportunities and challenges and anything else. And then we just got an email from Katrina that once things are more developed later in the year, we will have this longer meeting with Barry Dunn to go over all of that. And I believe we're tentatively scheduling it for November 2nd, which is the afternoon after a Government Operations Committee meeting. So we'll be seeing a lot of each other that day. So that will be another opportunity to look at, the process and what the information coming out is. So, okay, Mike.
I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
Where are your offices located?
Yes, so our corporate headquarters is in Portland, Maine. That's where our company was founded back in 1974, I believe. We now have offices across the country, and we have a very large, what we call remote workforce of consultants existing in most of the states in the country. We also have offices in Puerto Rico and Hawaii, and we're a national firm. We work. Our team that does strategic planning work for local governments works all over the country.
So is there a local office somewhere in the region?
We have, I'm trying to think of what would be the closest office to you. I think it would be Maine. We have an office in Boston. We have 3 offices in Maine. We have an office in New Hampshire. So we don't have one in New York, but we have several right around the area.
Okay, thank you for that. The other question I wanted to ask is, we have a comprehensive plan for the county. How does, what will you add to that? How will you incorporate that? What is the nexus between the two?
Yeah, so we often encounter and align with the comprehensive plan. Sometimes those processes are going on at the same time that we're doing the strategic plan. As you know, a comprehensive plan is laying out, a 20 to 30-year vision for how you're going to build out your community. And the services that are going to be provided as part of that. A strategic plan is a near-term focus. It should definitely align with your comprehensive plan, but it may include some things, for example, internal to the organization that are not part of the comprehensive plan. So it's a shorter-term focus. It aligns with your comprehensive plan. It may include some shorter-term strategies that support the implementation of your comprehensive plan. Karen, do you want to add to anything I said there?
No, I think you've covered it. It's really that alignment long term and then a little bit shorter term, but they do absolutely work together.
Thank you.
Any other questions? at the moment? Well, unless you have more, Michelle and Karen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. We appreciate the time to spend with you.
Yeah,
We'll see you down the line.
we'll see you down the line and
Absolutely.
see you on email, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Lisa, for getting them here and making sure we have that update. All right, so why don't we move along, and why don't we invite Steve and Alana to come on up and give us a little update from the Board of Elections. We haven't seen you in a while, so thanks for coming by. You probably have one or two things going on.
Yeah, well, compared to last year, so far this is a quiet year, thankfully. But brief report. We have a primary election on June 27th in 3 towns and 4 wards in the city. The early voting starts on June 17th through the 25th, and the polling place for early voting is going to be at the Town of Ithaca Town Hall. And the hours will be 9 to 5 each day, except for Tuesday and Thursday when it'll be noon to 8. The other piece of news is that we are looking at purchasing new voting machines probably early next year. We have lined up 3 vendors who, if they haven't been certified by the State Board of Elections, should be certified within the next month. We've invited them to come to Tompkins County and show us their equipment. All 3 of the presentations will be right here in the legislative chambers. And we'll probably spend 3 to 4 hours with our staff assessing the election management system for each of the vendors, along with the voting machines, and then we plan on opening up for the public for a couple of hours to, if they want to come in and just see what's out there. The vendors are, we're doing, let me see, I gotta look at this, put it on a little piece of paper. We have Hart Intercivic coming here on July 13th. Clear Ballot is going to be here on July 11th, and Dominion will be here on July 26th. There is a 4th vendor that is likely to be certified, but as my understanding, it would require us to buy probably over 100 units, and which would be probably twice what our budget is. So, but you know, we'll see what they have to offer.
How will you, what are the criteria? How do you assess which vendor to go with?
Well, we've got, 15 years experience with the current system. And I mean, some of the things that we find unwieldy about the current system is that the election management system for creating ballots is very counterintuitive, and it seems like very few of the employees that work with it get really adept at using it. Fortunately, we've always had at least one on board that can do that. But the other thing is with the current voting machines, we're hoping that they'll be the newer models will be easier for the poll workers to work with. Right now, it's a pretty extensive process for setting up the current voting machines, and if you get something that's a lot more easier, we're probably going to be looking at space considerations for how much space will the equipment take up. And it just, I'm pretty confident the voter interface is going to be similar with them all, so it's more looking at what really works, for us and our poll workers.
Questions? Mike?
Folks, is there just going to be one early voting location instead of two?
For the primary, yes, because
The primary.
it's only, we're only 13 polling sites on election day out of the 36 we have, so it's only about a third of the county.
Okay, but what about the general election?
General will definitely be two.
Two for the
Yeah,
general
it'll be the
election.
same
Okay.
two that we've had. CFR building at the airport would be the other one.
I have no idea, but this fourth vendor that you're talking about, if that should be something that you were interested in, would it be possible to aggregate the purchasing with other counties to get up to 100?
Well, it's not the 100 minimum that we would, it's not like a 100 minimum order. It's what the situation is that the State Board of Elections, the election law says that if you have an optical scan where the voter fills out their ballot, feeds it, you need one machine for every, I think, 4,000 voters. This really this is a different type of unit. It's classified, from what I understand, as a DRE, direct recording electronic device, where the voter marks their choices on a touch screen, it prints it out a paper card, and then they evaluate their choices. And from what I understand, that if you're having one of those units, you need one of those units for every 550 voters. Because essentially, it's like the voting booth. I mean, your voter goes to this machine and they tie up that one machine for the whole time they are making their choices. Whereas with all the other three vendors, you're marking the paper ballot just as you do now, so the only time you're interacting with the machines is 10 seconds it takes to cast your ballot.
One other question, if I may, and that is, I know we have these machines that allow people with disabilities to vote in different methods. In the past, I know there haven't been very many people using them. Has that changed? Do we still have very few people that actually use those machines?
Yeah, that's correct. Although we will be talking to Flick, Finger Lakes Independence Center. We'll invite them to the to the public part of these things. I'd like to get them more engaged because it's still a component that we have to do, and it would be really good if we could get some people using it.
But we still have very few people using them?
We haven't had anybody use it in 10 years.
Really? Nobody in 10 years? They go for the absentee ballots, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, we had one person in the Dryden school election about 3 or 4 years ago that came and wanted to use it, but other than that, nothing in our elections.
Thanks, Steve.
Rich?
I wasn't on GO last year, so I'm wondering if this was discussed already, but are the present machines at end of life? Why are we doing this?
End of life, they are getting close. I mean, it takes a lot more time for maintenance of them. They're becoming, you're getting more and more calls on election day. And there's different reasons for it, but yeah, the new generation that's out there is very much an upgrade. And I think probably, historically, the big reason we're running into problems with these machines is they integrate the ballot marking device for the ADA community. They integrate that with the scanner software. It doesn't always play nice. And the new units, the state is now, I think, mandating that new machines are going to have separate units, one for the ADA community to use if they want to have a ballot marking device, and then the separate unit which will scan all the ballots, whether they're marked on the ballot marking device or by the voter.
And just ballpark, what kind of spend are we thinking about here?
We have a capital project right now for $625,000. There is also in the state legislature budget that was just passed, there's a little over $80,000 for purchasing equipment. So that will definitely offset, you know, a portion of that 625.
Right, other questions? Well, thank you for coming by. It's good to see you both in person. And yeah, come back anytime. All right, let's see. I see Jay Frank up there. And we have a resolution from assessment. Why don't we go ahead and move this authorization to direct the county administrator to sign a pilot agreement with NSF Danby LLC. Somebody move that. Rich, seconded by Susan. Thank you. Hi, Jay. You want to talk to us about this?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here. So yeah, this is an odd request, but unfortunately it's the result of the New York State legislation that created Real Property Tax Law Section 487. So this provides an exemption, that section of law provides an exemption for any solar, wind, farm waste energy system, and they keep adding more and more new technology to that. So this is one of the exemptions that you're in unless you opt out of. And so right now the county is in the exemption. So all of the solar and wind and farm waste energy systems could be exempt for 15 years because we're in the exemption. But there's a provision within this section that a taxing jurisdiction can require a pilot up until the amount of taxes due or would be due if the property was taxable. So a lot of times we've used this to say a solar installation would come in. We'd say we're going to require a pilot. The solar developer goes to the IDA, they get their standard IDA pilot, and then they move on. But this company said, no, we don't actually want an abatement or a pilot through the IDA. We simply want an agreement with the county to say you are going to pay a pilot payment that would equal the amount of taxes due as if the property was on the taxable section of the roll. Right now, it will be fully taxable for Ithaca City, Ithaca Consolidated School Districts, and I believe Danby is also going for a pilot in this. So really, this pilot isn't doing anything. The only thing that it's doing is creating another bill, which would be the same amount as if we were to bill them in the same manner. But this agreement provides tax surety to the developers and their investors that this is how the property is going to be assessed. I think you're going to see more of these. New York State in this year's budget enacted a solar calculator for solar installation that provides 60 to 70% exemption over the true market value of these solar installations. New York State bills that calculator as a fair assessment, but it's far from that. There was a court case about it, how it was adopted, but that's why they changed how this legislation was adopted in this budget year to make that prior court case moot, and then they can just move on with this. But so I think we'll see more of these, but this is just a lot of work to really do nothing.
That sounds like fun. Questions? Rich?
I hesitate to even ask, but why did the ICSD opt out if it doesn't have any financial implications? What is their thing? Are they going to be able to increase property taxes for school districts, for the school district?
Yeah. Well, this also gets into the dilemma of how can you force a pilot when you need two sides to agree to that pilot? ICSD removed themselves from this exemption way back when the Black Oak Wind Farm was coming in. So in order to force somebody into a pilot, we felt that you needed to be out of the exemption, or else how could you agree to a pilot amount? So by being out of the exemption, the alternative for a pilot would have been full taxes for the Ithaca Consolidated School District. No one would pay that, so everybody would go to a pilot. So this is one of those, somebody needed to be out of the exemption in order to protect the financial interests of requiring a pilot.
We're glad you understand this.
As I said, this is one of the most poorly written exemption statutes that I've seen, and unfortunately, we can't get any traction to try to clean it up.
You know, I note that at the IDA, we're not seeing the solar projects anymore. At least we haven't for some time. It does seem like this is now the route, but it's a complicated mess. And I don't quite understand why we ended up with this, but okay. Here we are.
Yeah, exactly. Other questions for Jay on this? It is a little hard to understand, but exactly, this is where we are. Okay.
Yeah, I had asked the company just yesterday and said, you know, why are we doing this? If they didn't have this request, I would still value the property the same and the taxes would be the same. But it's simply for surety to their investors. And who knows where the solar calculator will go? You know, in this calculator, New York State has predicted energy prices will bottom out. I don't think that's happening, but, you know, we'll see if they adjust their assumptions and get the calculator a little more realistic in what true value of these solar installations are.
All right, anything else on this? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Any other updates while you're here, Jay?
Well, we had grievance day yesterday, or last week on May 23rd, 211 grievances, which was less than we had last year. Our number of preliminary hearings was down about 200 from last year, despite making 4,000 more changes. Last year we made 22,000, this year we're at 26. So I think that process went pretty good. Now we're looking at our 2024 AEM program, and this market just isn't slowing down by any stretch of the means. You know, we still just have a low supply of houses, and, you know, as soon as you see a house go on the market, there's 15 viewings within 2-3 days, and it's probably going to get bid up. So we're developing our plan for 2024, but all indications look like we're going to revalue everything again next year.
All right, any other questions for Jay? Mike?
Jay, the exemption that we put in for the volunteer firefighters and emergency workers, how's that going for you? I know you were concerned about how you determine who's eligible. Are we getting a lot of applications?
I want to say we had about 25 or so. Probably about 3 of those were ones that we denied them because their income tax credit would be better off. Because only, you know, the town or the county were in and not the school districts as well. Yes. So I think that's gone well. A problem that I see is I see legislation at the state now that's going to increase that income tax credit to $500. So if that happens, a lot of these exemptions are now not going to be more beneficial. They might as well just take the income tax credit. So it is something to manage, but it's something that Tamara Van Orman is doing a great job managing those and making sure we're only getting the exemption to people who would benefit more from it.
But it's not a great group of people so far, just 25.
Correct, with just how late it was and getting people in, you know, I think, but the places, the districts that didn't apply, I don't think would have been eligible just based upon the county adopting it. The areas that we were able to get people to apply, we had the town and the county adopting it. So that increased that sweet point. So, you know, like Lansing, the town of Lansing didn't adopt it, and up until last week or so. So it just wasn't financially beneficial for those volunteers to apply. But we'll do the same sort of outreach this time around, and we'll hopefully get a little more people.
Town of Lansing has not adopted this. Do you know if they intend to?
No, they just did within last month or so, but they didn't have it applied by March 1 of this year.
Gotcha.
So it wouldn't be on this assessment roll.
Okay. I don't see any more hands. I think we're good. Thanks so much for being here, Jay.
Oh, no problem. Take care. Have a good day, everyone. Enjoy the heat.
Yeah, you too. All right, moving on to County Clerk. Maureen Reynolds is here. It's good to see you. And before the meeting started, Maureen let slip that today is her 30th anniversary of working at the county.
Yeah.
So I think that deserves
Yeah, my truck has a, remote, I hit that and it takes me right to work every day.
AI.
all right, well, thanks for being here. Let's see, we have a resolution, authorization to accept a grant from New York State Archives, County Clerk. Can somebody move that? Mike, seconded by Susan. And I like it when you come because you're always accepting grants and things.
Yeah. Yeah, so this grant is one I wrote to help out Whole Health. So they are needing more space, so we're going to clean out some of their record storage areas and put them in Laserfiche. I have one of my staff people is going to go up physically to there and sit and do it most of the week, and then I'm hiring a project assistant to help out. So it looks like it'll be a good project. Hopefully help them out, get some more office space up there.
Great. Questions, comments on this? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. That was easy. And I think we might have some questions for you. Mike?
Oh, thanks. I wanted to bring up, if I could with you, Maureen, the CDL testing site. And I know you were an early proponent of trying to get a testing site in Tompkins County. Recently, we've been talking about how we could fund that, including the possibility of a capital project. And I've been hearing some feedback from some legislators saying we really don't need it. I wonder what your opinion is. It still the same or not?
Well, I could ask Julie to get more information because she deals with the people that come in and test a lot. But I've heard complaints that a business has to take a full-time driver, CDL licensed driver, along with the applicant and a piece of equipment to a regional testing site. So it takes, a full day out of their time, gas, getting there. We have a lot of people coming to take the permit tests that make complaints about that. I have heard the state is moving to do like they did with the motorcycle testing, where if you go and you pay money, you spend a couple days in class, and they'll give you your permit at the end of that, or your license at the end of that. But I don't know how well that's going to work with CDLs, because I've heard that the costs would be quite a bit for the school, and not everyone has the money to do that. I know when Mike Hall and I talked about this way back when, one of the goals was to offer it to BOCES to help train, students to become potential drivers in the future, and so that we didn't have to, always scramble and try to find drivers. I think the cost of the driving school would be prohibitive to some unless an employer is going to pay that. So I see that as a possibility of not working for some individuals. I know you spoke to the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles when he was here in December. I was not hovering over you, so I wasn't quite sure.
He was excited about our interest, but said he had no money at that time. But since then, I believe that, and I know Norma's been working on that,
Yeah.
trying to get us into their grant request to the state for money for CDL sites. And maybe Lisa has some more information on that, but so there's still that possibility that maybe we could get some money from the state.
Yeah, I know Commissioner Schroeder's really would like to see one here. I know that we have an active market here. It would be nice to have one here and not have to drive to a regional place. I know the trainers out of Rochester, they've always been after me to find a spot. And Mike and I have looked for years with Jay helping, looking at aerial maps, trying to find different spots. So that when Mike called about Fourth Airport years ago, that was a nice option. It works through all the guidelines.
Norma had she heard back from the state DMV that there was not funding available.
Oh, that's brand new then.
Yeah.
Well, not surprising, but
We can work on it.
at least we tried on that one. But I still think that, personally think that this is still something we should pursue.
Rich?
For clarity, the airport site, would somebody be driving like on the taxiway? Where is the facility?
It was going to be at the off the site, not on the airport itself, but at the end by like where the DOT is, I think, at one time was where they're going to do it, and they're just going to put, like a rough parking lot in, like a little shed with a bathroom and Wi-Fi. And that's all that really required was the size. So, and that would be easy access for the BOCES kids, easy access for most of the employers, right across from DOT.
So the actual test is given on city or county roads or?
Yes.
Okay.
They like to have it near a major highway like 13. They like to have a railroad crossing. They have different guidelines. The problem with when we used to give them down here was a parking lot has to meet certain size requirements, and we can't do that down here once the feds got involved and changed the testing, so.
I'm wondering, is there any quick and dirty way to do this to, get to the finish line? Because we've talked about it for so long, and it does
At least
seem
4
like
years we've been talking about it.
it just seems like a really useful thing.
Yeah, I mean,
And
Mike Hall was a big advocate when I first talked to him, and he really, that he saw a vision for that, so, yeah.
But it doesn't sound like it has to be the airport. I was thinking there were large space requirements, but it really is.
It's got to have a certain size parking lot to do the testing
Okay.
on. And we did look at aerial maps with Jay, and we found a few sites, and people just weren't willing to work with us on it.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yep.
Probably be talking about this more at
Yeah, and I can
at
touch base with the commissioner.
F&I committee next week.
Other questions for Maureen? Rich?
I just wanted to mention, I recently renewed a registration down at the DMV, and I think I was in your building less than a minute. It was the fastest visit to the DMV I'd ever had. It
Yeah.
just, like, the line opened up, I walked in, I wrote my check while the clerk processed my paperwork, and I turned around and walked out, and I goes, I think that was less than a minute.
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
cool.
I
Hit the
actually,
little happy face on the way out?
I didn't, I guess I'm doing it now.
okay. It's usually at 97% happy to 100%, so I'm pretty happy. I have cameras in my office so I can watch the lines, and I'll actually pick out one person, and I'll see how long it takes to get through the lines, and it's usually in under a 5-minute wait, unless, certain days. Last Friday was our Black Friday. Everyone wants to license their boats and motorcycles and campers and RVs, with Memorial Day coming, so. And then when the students come back, we have long lines, but we're almost up to full staff finally. So we have 3 new persons that have started, that are doing fairly good, and we've hired 2 more to start in 2 weeks. So then we'll be full staffed. So that's gonna be good.
I also have, repeatedly hear good things about the DMV. My stepdaughter, one of my stepdaughter's friends bought a car here and was struggling and having a hard time trying to, buy the car and all of that. What she said about going to the DMV in the whole process was that was her happy place throughout the whole process of buying a used car and all that. So I was like, well.
Yeah, it's my staff. My staff are really good.
That's Maureen. So Anyway,
Thank
thank
you.
you for the work you do, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, on to the most riveting part of the meeting. Folks had wanted to talk a little bit about quorum, so I included a couple of sections about quorum and voting from Robert's Rules. And I was also thinking I probably should have included the section from our Rules of the Legislature, because we have a small section. Rule number 2 in the Rules of the Legislature is about quorum. There's 3 paragraphs in there, so you should definitely check those out. So I don't know if people have thoughts or questions, or I had a couple things that I thought were interesting to point out. I hope everyone took the time to read them. Susan?
I've had a question from, excuse me, a commission that I'm liaison to about quorums via Zoom. You know, is it, yeah, so,
Right.
you know, like, first, is it okay for I think they're struggling to figure out how to have meetings in person, and
Right.
the majority of people still want to meet by Zoom. So
Right.
first, is it okay to have, you know, you determine the quorum via Zoom? And is the other question very specific, which surprised me a little, is, well, if you're meeting via Zoom and you vote, is that legitimate?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I would look to Bill, but I think we addressed this last year with the local law.
But I figured. But
Yeah,
wanted to make
that
sure.
said, if a person on the commission or the board or whatever has a reason, an extenuating circumstance, I think that's what they said, like an illness or childcare or their car broke down and they can't make it to the meeting, then they can attend by Zoom. They don't count towards quorum.
That's what I need to know.
Right, but they can vote, and the vote does count. So it's a little bit weird. My interpretation is that really we should all be meeting in person, and only if you have, you know, sort of a legitimate reason not to be there could you attend via Zoom. And this has come up on the library board. You know, it's taken a while to really get people back into the mode of you have to show up and be there, and they are slowly doing that, and then you have to have quorum to be able to do any business. So do you think I have that right, Bill?
I do, and I will take a look at it and see if there's been any statutory changes. I think we've suddenly backed our way into this, and it's working, and everyone's leaving it alone, but I'll double-check that.
Know that the chair of this particular commission has been trying to get people to meet in person, but I think it's really based on work schedules, and so it's continued to meet by Zoom. But this is very helpful because I can let them know.
Yeah.
Meeting by Zoom doesn't count toward the quorum, even though the
Right.
entire group is meeting.
But if
But
they,
the votes count.
the votes count, but if they don't have quorum, according to Robert's rules, they can't do any business.
So they really should be meeting in person.
Yeah.
So I need to let them know that.
So
Okay.
in the papers here, I mean, there's a couple of things that you can do if you don't have quorum, and basically it's you can call for quorum, you can pause the meeting. I can't remember,
Yeah, I saw.
there was like very limited, you can, let's see, you can adjourn, you can recess, or you can take measures to obtain a quorum. So they can't, I mean, you know, I've been in meetings where people say, well, look, we can just discuss things if you're not voting on something, so I don't know if that's legitimate, but you can't take any official action.
So at this point, I just want to be able to, since they're asking me, they really need to be, and that might help the chair of the
Yeah.
group to say, we have to meet in person, because by now, you know, the pandemic is officially over,
Yeah.
and we should be meeting because we're really not supposed to be conducting business, because they've been conducting votes.
Right,
So, okay.
yeah. Rich?
I found this interesting for a couple of reasons, but one of them was the call of the House. That we have our own rules, but then we defer to Robert's rules in all other instances. And the question did come to mind, do we have the power to compel, we do have subpoena power.
Yeah. I
Could
was
we do a
thinking,
call
I
to
was
the
thinking
House
of
and-
using it to make Dan show up here today. Go put him under arrest.
Yeah, I mean, it starts to look like Wisconsin, right? Or Texas, I think they did it. I thought that was interesting. Also, the beginning of it, where they're talking about defining quorum in mass meetings. And I've been on not-for-profit boards where you have your annual meeting, and I always feel like there's this legitimacy question of, how do we have the authority to meet? And this is an elegant solution, saying, if you're there, yeah, you're the organization and you're the quorum.
Right.
And it automatically means you always have a quorum in those vague not-for-profits.
Right, yeah. Right.
So, yeah, I'm not sure that that always is the best thing, but it solves the issue.
Thoughts? Mike?
No, this is fine. It's a little more than we get into in our meetings.
Yes.
But it is academically very interesting. I agree with Rich about the call of the House. Don't know if we've ever set a fine amount. I think we'd have to get some sergeants at arms in order to be able to enforce all this.
Brittany and Katrina. They could go out and arrest people.
Have them, says they have to be brought in and then they get questioned on why they weren't there, and they decide whether they get fined or not. I love it.
I was just going to point out, in the voting section, something that stood out to me on page 23 about abstaining from voting on a question of direct personal interest. It recommends that you shouldn't vote on something that relates to you, like financially relates to you. However, no member can be compelled to refrain from voting. So you don't have to abstain, or nobody can say, you have a direct financial interest in this, you can't vote. Like, you still can vote, which obviously goes against ethics, or, but anyway, I thought that was interesting. And then also farther down that page, changing one's vote. So you actually could change your vote before the vote is called. A member has a right to change his vote up to the time the result is announced. So if before Katrina calls or Sean, whoever calls it, before they finally do that, you could say, okay, wait a second, actually, I'm a no, or whatever. So I didn't know that was possible. Mike?
You may remember when I was chair, that's the way I always handled it. So we would have a vote, and before the clerk announced the vote, I would always ask whether anyone wanted to change a vote.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I ever had one happen, but then I would
Call it.
have the clerk go ahead and
Yeah.
announce the vote.
Yeah.
But that was trying to comply with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, there could be an instance where, on a challenging topic that you're halfway through and you're like, wait a minute, maybe I should change my vote. Rich?
Yeah, thank you for raising the issue involving abstaining from voting on a question of direct personal interest. That, yeah, you can vote, but we also have our code of ethics.
Right.
And so you're allowed to vote, but you could be violating the code of ethics at the same time.
Right.
I thought the counterpoint with voting on questions affecting oneself is an interesting distinction.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was raised regarding me recently, in that I own some property in the West End, and the question arose, well, maybe you shouldn't vote on any questions involving homelessness. And, I've had some conversation about that, and it's just too broad a restriction, because we all own property or rent property in the community, and suddenly the examples here of, say, you could never have a banquet.
Right, yeah,
everybody would
be voting. Yeah.
Everybody would be going to the banquet or have the ability to. it is, there's an interesting puzzle there. But people raise questions about that one, but it's
Yeah.
good that there's clarity here.
But I think also sometimes in advisory boards, people say, oh, can I vote, to elect myself to be the vice chair of this board? And yes, you can. You don't, otherwise you may not end up with enough votes, or something. So, yeah.
There's a great thing about if you didn't have this rule, a minority could
Right.
control the
Control
voting
votes,
by
yeah.
using the personal interest.
Right. Let's see, then I underlined something on challenging or retaking a vote. Yeah. A member may raise a point of order regarding the conduct of the vote, demand a division of the assembly, move to retake the vote under another method, or numerous other things. So I thought that was interesting that, it says after the result of a vote has been announced. You can still propose to change it, but it has to be immediately. It can't be later in the meeting. It has to be sort of right at that moment. But I think that's also something interesting to, if you feel like it was done wrong or the count wasn't taken appropriately, you can redo it. Yeah, so definitely some interesting bits in here. Katrina.
I just wanted to point out that the charter also has a list of definitions, and quorum was one of them.
Okay.
So there, section 1, I think, in the charter.
Okay.
There's a list of definitions, so.
And does that comply, is that the same as Rule 2 in our rules of the legislature?
I believe that's where it was derived from.
Okay.
Or the two were coordinated.
Okay. Right, so back to Susan, your question. This is specific to the legislature, but the rules say if a quorum is not present, the legislature may not convene or take action. So personally, I feel like that applies to an advisory board as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Right after this meeting.
All right, anything else on these Robert's rules? So for next month, I'm going to take a break from providing these, and I'm going to give my colleagues, legislators, some homework. I am requesting that each of you read through the current rules of the legislature. Rich and I read through it all a couple years ago. We revised the whole thing, but I think it's good for everybody to take another look, and you each have to come next month with one comment or question about the rules that either something maybe you feel like should change, or maybe something you forgot that we don't do, or and I say this because we have, after our last meeting, we had a couple of small things that we wanted to change in the rules, and I want everyone to have a chance to read through them. And if you see anything else that you feel like might need to change, let's talk about that. And I think it's good because we have some long-standing members who maybe haven't read them in a while, and we have a new member who maybe needs to brush up on it. So I will remind you that this is your homework. Nobody else has to do it. Don't worry, just legislators. And I will also let Dan know that he has homework.
The dog may have eaten my homework by then.
Oh, no.
I have extra copies.
Darn.
All right. That's my committee chair report. I don't have any other report. Lisa, any other reports from you?
Nothing from county administration, thank you.
Anything, Bridget, from you? Okay. Bill, any updates from you?
Two things. One of our longtime employees has retired, Susie,
Right.
and we're looking for a replacement. And we have plenty of work to do. Keeps us busy. We had a non-jury trial with one of our deputies accused of federal civil rights violations, and it was tried as a bench trial, no jury. So the other side had 5 weeks to put his written summation in. That came in yesterday, and I'll respond within 5 weeks, and we'll get a decision.
Right. Lori, Director of Finance.
Yeah, I have a few updates from the Finance Department. First off, the auction for delinquent parcels will be next Monday night, June 5th. And we had the pre-meeting this past Tuesday. At the pre-meeting, we had 8 parcels, and somebody came in yesterday and paid on another one, so we will be having 7, it looks like, going to auction next week. Also, we're working on the year-end audit. We've had some staff in working with us, and the next 2 weeks of June, we will be having several auditors there working with us to clearing up year-end and get that done. As we finish that up, we'll begin working on the annual update document that is due to New York State. It was due April 30th. I believe a notice was sent out to all of you notifying that we are delinquent on that. Our plan is to get that done as soon as we can after the audit, so looking at the end of June for that. Also, we are working on the sales tax distribution. That is a little bit behind. January has gone out. February's distribution is going out this week, and we are currently working on March's distribution, and that's where we are with sales tax. And the last thing is we did receive some casino revenue for the quarter on Friday in the amount of $601,000, which brings us to just over $1,192,000 for 2023. We had budgeted $2.1 million, which puts us at 56.8% of the budgeted amount for the year.
56%.
Yep.
Oh. Okay, thanks for all of that. Questions?
One point
Yeah, Bill.
people may find interesting. With the Supreme Court case, not surprisingly, a lot of county attorneys are calling and talking to one another. And any time I mention we were down to 8 cases, there's like silence on the phone. Absolutely nobody can believe that we're doing that. So it's remarkable.
Yeah, yeah.
I think they think I'm fibbing, but I said, no, it's true. You can look.
Call them back and say 7.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's great. I think we all appreciate the good work that you all put in. So thank you. Mike?
So I was hoping we'd hear some more about that Supreme Court case. And I realize that probably some things are up in the air, but they keep saying that the property owner has to be repaid the amount over the taxes. But what about all our administrative fees? Do we get to take that out of it?
That's what we're going to try to do. It's not really clear. It's an expense of doing this. I think it's relevant, but we may be in uncharted waters. So they're basically saying any excess money you can have, but I'm reading it as we are entitled to enforce our law as to what we're entitled to get on this deal.
Are we expecting guidance out of the state or the Attorney General or anything?
Silence so far since this decision came down. So there's, 68 county attorneys trying to figure out what to do. So all you can do is look at it and, write it up and say, this is how we're going to do it.
NISAC is advocating to the state to pause on this until, and recommending a task force be formed to create policies and procedures on how to enact going forward. Because there are 2 counties that are currently following this guidance, or that have been doing their foreclosures in this way, and there are some lessons to be learned about how they have been doing it. And so my understanding is NISAC is wanting to put those procedures in place before the state enacts something either way.
I'm very concerned because I don't know what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to have our foreclosure Monday night. We've heard nothing from Albany. The governor apparently was in favor of this type of decision from the Supreme Court, but there's no guidance anywhere. So I'm going to actually have a general conversation with people from all over upstate New York but it's Monday. So what do I do? So I have to decide if we should just adjourn this with a public notice, or how we adjourn it and what we do. Or we could do it, and then any money we think is ours, we put it in escrow saying, we'll give you a chance to take it up in court and let's see how this works. I don't think we can be faulted for that.
That seems a reasonable path.
Yeah. So I don't want to get us in trouble, but I don't want to get us in trouble because we didn't do something we should have done in a timely fashion. I think if we just say to everybody, we're going to put this money aside in escrow while we learn from our courts in our state what they want to do.
Yeah.
Are we going to have to be looking more closely at any liens that might have been on the property that we're foreclosing on? I mean, do we have to pay some of this money to a mortgage holder, for example?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, everything's going to be canceled out. The only thing we have is certain taxes are paid no matter whether the homeowner has paid money into their account. So that, I think we get to take. That's my position, is going to be that, but I'll know more Monday. It's terrible.
I was going to say that, like in a mortgage foreclosure, the foreclosure will cut off the other liens after your notice of pendency has been filed. But I don't know if that happens here.
That doesn't apply here, from what I can see.
I wonder if we ought to be filing them, notice of pendencies.
Huh. I guess no harm, right? Yeah.
Well, keep us updated. All right, and we have Dominic here to give us some updates.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to share a presentation. Thanks for the flexibility and time. Share a presentation briefly about the language access policy and our progress to date on that. But before that, I just wanted to share a few updates in terms of the streaming operations here. So we have our capital project for the improvements to the streaming technology that Rob uses to stream our meetings. The cameras will be replaced. There will be some other adjustments, and there are some long overdue technical upgrades for upstairs to keep the system running. So there'll be a new desk with new systems integrated, and Rob can talk more about the details if anyone has additional questions. But folks have also likely realized that we have a screen that is out and malfunctioning, the large projector. And so we're looking into some options for how to adjust some things in this room. Screens are very expensive to service and replace. The projectors are quite old. We're waiting on some service quotes for what some of those things might look like versus some other options in the room. We also have been talking about this screen down at the end of the table. So I just wanted to let folks know we are looking into all of those, and we'll update technology. Those projectors are very expensive, to the bulbs inside of them, the projectors, and the scaffolding to service any given projector, which is a very challenging aspect of this particular room.
Mike?
We'll let him finish, but I want to say something after.
That's the crux of the update to it now, just that we're working on it and happy to take questions as needed, but I won't have all the answers because we're waiting on a few of the quotes and decisions and things, working through it with ITS.
Did you have a question about this? Or?
Well, I just want to say that when the committee decided to put these screens and projectors in, there was substantial discussion about that. Mm-hmm. Including one idea that there just be one screen up here behind the chair. And we rejected all of that.
Yep.
And so I would be very, very concerned if we're talking about taking the screens and projectors out.
Sure.
We need to replace one. I'm surprised it doesn't get used all that much, but I think that we need to do that.
Sure, they're approaching 10 years old or so. The technology has come quite a long ways. And so we'll have some pricing on looking at them. I will say for the capital project, the pricing for the projectors was prohibitive to sort of move forward with we have somewhere around $150,000 total project going on with the rest of the technology. Those projectors were quite prohibitively priced. I don't know off the top of my head. A few of the options that we are looking at is making sure that any screens that we installed would be visible by both the public and all legislators would be able to view it in a meaningful way to actually see what's being presented, that it would integrate with the system that we have. There's some controllers that have the audio hooked up to the projectors, which is a very odd way to do it, I think, but it's how it was set up originally. And we would make sure that you all were abreast of what potential updates would happen as well. And, you know, the projectors have worked great for us. The picture quality is also reducing year by year. I mean, that's not good, strong picture quality. It's certain colors don't show up quite as well as they could. And there's a lot of light in the room, which starts to make it a little challenging as well. Not that, you know, there's going to be no perfect solution, but there are challenges to each of the approaches.
I think it's real important that whatever suggestions are made are reviewed by the, probably this committee and by F&I before they're implemented.
Certainly we'll communicate those with you as we go along.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And then I will give me a moment to share my screen so I can share with you the update on the language access program. Let's see, you can see that there. If I press play. Perfect, okay. So the legislature last year approved language access policy edits, and part of that policy was to translate our information, most notably the website where a majority of our information lives and is accessed. And so I have a presentation here that walks you through our progress to date and where we're at. You'll see the word localization show up. That's the industry term for translating things like websites. So if you're speaking French, it would show up in your local language. Other companies might use this to show their company's website in a different country. For us, we're actually doing a very different model of it, showing people who live in our community who use a primary language other than English, their content here. So we're actually, slightly different than a lot of clients for these scenarios, but that's why you'll see that word localization show up. So you can see here a quick screenshot of our homepage of our website. Really just wanted to draw your attention to the top gray bar on here, which says that important information is translated into these 8 languages. Still working out the best way to link to these languages and figuring out how people will access it, but ultimately, as we're sort of soft launching this, that's the best way for people to access these 8 languages translated. You'll also see the little select language drop down, and that's for the rest of the languages that are done by machine translation, and I'll get into that a little later on. So you don't have to read all of this right now, I'll share this presentation with the full legislature after the fact. But language access and assistance policy has, some of the new updates to that were related to the website here, so you can see all content on the website should be translated into the required languages. And then we have a definition of critical public information I'll speak to in a moment. When something is deemed critical public information, we're having that translated by a human translator so that it is as close to perfectly translated into each language as possible. And the rest of the information on the website will be automatically machine translated. And then in addition to what I'm presenting on today with the website aspect, there are translation and interpretation protocols that our departments use well, and have the resources to do so. So I'm going to not speak to that side of the policy today, since that's sort of an ongoing, there weren't a lot of updates with that particular area. This is the definition in the policy of critical public information. Essentially something that's time sensitive and has a deep impact on the public's health, well-being, ability to engage in democratic processes. et cetera. And so that helped us look at all 1,000 plus or minus pages of the county's website. I went through every single one, applied this definition to the content on the website, and we're still, for new content, going through this. So this tool in the policy is very helpful to figure out how we want to do that. So you may be wondering how we identified those languages that are across that top bar. There's a couple of things we did, ultimately using sort of expanded, I'd like to say more inclusive approach of the four-factor analysis that's required by federal law. But we analyzed data from our local census. We communicated with all of our local partners that work with populations who use a primary language other than English. That's the Cornell Interpreter Program, Tompkins Learning Partners. I'm going to forget folks if I start naming them all, but Catholic Charities, some other volunteers in the community, and that was a great process. Working with Latino Civic Association, Ithaca Asian American Alliance, that was a great process working with them in the lead up of this, and I'm very grateful for their participation. And then that four-factor analysis that's a part of the policy talks about similar things, the number of people locally who use that language and how eligible they are for services, the frequency of contact with county programs and services. So we analyzed all receipts through the current interpretation tools. So if someone shows up to the mental health building and uses Spanish as their primary language, and someone directs them to resources in Spanish, that's going to be interpreted and will ultimately cost the county, and so we looked at all those receipts and helped to identify these languages. The nature of the program or service and the amount of resources available. So relatively broad, but that's how we ended up at our 8 languages. So this is a little confusing, but our website the ultimate goal is to have it to be multilingual, so people can access that information in the language that they use primarily. What we're using is, and what we've been able to procure through American Rescue Plan Act funds that the legislature made available to this project, was a service called SmartLing. It's an industry-leading service that translates websites and other content. It's amazing. I've been really happy to use it, and we've just scratched the surface on how much of it we use. And there's 3 layers of what they can do. So human translation, machine translation where a computer translates it like Google Translate, very similar to that, and then a professional will review it and see how good that machine translation is and make it perfect. And then pure machine translation where we just say this page isn't super important or it's outdated, we're just going to have the machine translate it. Some machine translations are excellent. They've gotten far better in the past year than when we started this, actually. And we were using a mix of both SmartLing professionals and and local translators as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing that SmartLing allows us to do is use translation memory. So if someone translates, a string of text, like if someone says Legislature Chairwoman Shauna Black, anytime that appears, it'll automatically show up for the translator. So we're not paying for the same string of characters a million times every time it shows up. We're just paying for it the once, and then it books into that memory. And on the right-hand side, you can see how the cloud works. So you go to Tompkins County's website, and it delivers the English version. But once you click into Tompkins County's website, the first example there is /FR. That's the French site. Once you hit that, any further page that you go to will be delivered from SmartLing as the French website. Rich?
You're wondering, Karen, is that from India?
Burmese, specific to some of our Burmese refugees locally, immigrants. Yep. And that's one that there's not a huge population, but there's enough individuals who have accessed our service that the four-factor analysis and what we've done would sort of rise them up. And yeah, you can see there the list of languages. So Spanish, traditional and simplified Chinese, Karen, Vietnamese, Russian, Arabic, and French. And some of them are unique as well. So I might get this slightly wrong, but like Arabic is the Northern African dialect of Arabic because that's where most of our local immigrants who speak Arabic are from. I wanted to speak to website challenges a little bit, since primarily we're doing this with the county's website. So right now, open on our SmartLink platform, there are 1,400 content-related issues from the website. So when a translator is trying to translate something and it's outdated, or it has spelling or grammar errors, or the information is inaccessible somehow, that adds a significant amount of staff time on my end, but also, you know, it just shows the breadth of what we need to fix on our website. There's a significant amount of information that's not up to par, I would argue. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a chart. We have a tool called Site Improve that looks at our website every week and says how well we're doing to meet certain quality scores. Our score is below the industry benchmark for governments, and that's based on things like quality assurance. So how readable is your content? Accessibility, how well is it showing up for someone who might have a screen reader or color blindness or other things? And then SEO, how easy is it to find on something like Google or search engines? And yeah, we have to improve this, and we'll talk more about that in coming months, but it is impacting our translation because the content is not at the level that it needs to be across the whole site. I talked a little bit about local translators. One of the really unique things that we were able to do, and that SmartLink allowed us to do with the platform that they have, is take people who live in our community, who know our community, and actually hire them to do the translations. And so this graph, and I wish all the colors weren't purple so you could see it a little easier. It's a good example of the projector problem. A little bit easier here. The dark purple is 55% of what we've done so far has been translated by these individuals from Tompkins County. And then you can see 19% was done by folks hired through SmartLink, and then there's a little bit smaller parts of machine translation or something slightly different. The reason that it's not all local Tompkins County translators is it's a lot of content, and these people are doing this as like a part-time role in addition to what they're doing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. I mentioned before we're reviewing for quality control, and that that commitment to those local translators is part of what's supported through the ARPA funds designated to this. Bill?
Question, what is the wait time from somebody asking for a translator or interpreter and it happening? Is there any data on that?
Yeah, so there's two. I'll show you one data point later, but perhaps I think if someone comes in the door and is looking for a translator or interpreter, departments all have access to a service called Language Line. They would be able to call Language Line, and that would happen right away. They're on the phone or on an iPad or something like that. So that part is one system. This waiting on a piece of content on the website to be translated, we can dictate what the due dates are on those. So sometimes we've had something that needed to be translated immediately, and so it costs a little bit extra to do something like that, but we've had that done. I had Shauna's speech about asylum seekers translated, and that took, I think I sent it in on a Thursday, it came back on a Monday. So some things can take a little longer than we'd like, but part of that is because everyone's time's taken up getting through all of the backlog of things to do. So once and I'll have a chart for you after, but once everything's translated, it'll be much quicker as well. These are three of the local translators who've worked on this. I just selected three of the individuals who we've worked closely with, Racile, Cecilia, and Marie France. You can read a little bit about their background, what they're doing, and they all provided a quote about working with the county. And so, yeah, they've been excellent. They are able to use the SmartLink tool to look at the website and actually see how their translations will show up, and they can see the context of the whole site. And yeah, we're paying each translator a per word rate that's an industry norm, industry average sort of thing, the same price that it would be to a SmartLink translator or other people that we would use. And we're contracting with each of those individuals to do that work. So yeah, these three have been excellent, and just wanted to share a thank you. And all of our local translators were recommended to us by community partners. So we opened up the call to Tompkins Learning Partners, IAAA, Latino Civic Association, all of those folks, and said, okay, do you have someone that you would recommend? Maybe it's someone who's gone through your program or someone that volunteers with you. And that's how we ended up with the translators we contracted with. Here's a little more of that data on progress to date. We've translated nearly 800,000 words. And to your point, Bill, 97.9% of them were delivered on time. The due dates were not super aggressive. So that point is a little mute here, but interesting nonetheless, and we track that over time. So if that were to go low, we would be able to know, okay, we're not getting things back on time, we need to adjust our approach. And this doesn't include machine translation yet. That Karen language that we were talking about, used by the local Burmese population, is a limited language. It's not a remarkably popular language around the world or other sort of companies using it. We're probably one of the few who are using it at the level we are, and so machine translation isn't as useful for that language because computers don't know it as well. That's my limited understanding of that. But we're working on that problem, and then we'll be able to launch the rest of the machine translated content on the website. And on the right-hand side, you can see why we haven't gone to a full, press release, large announcement, and everything. The green bars show what's been completed for each language, imagining the whole bar is 100%. The yellow bars in the middle, what's under review step, and the purple bar is what's authorized but waiting to get started. Spanish has the most in the review step, and we're working on speeding that up quite significantly. And what's next? Just a few things that the rest of the sort of policy implementation and efforts going on with this. All of our departments have access to a language identification card. So if someone walks in and wants to be able to point to the language they use and then get services in that language, we have a few different versions being used. We recommend using the New York State one in our policy. New York State updates it every once in a while. I think because we have a website that has information in these 8 languages, we need a locally produced card that says that as well, so people may be able to actually get what they need on the website rather than having to always use language line, which could result in cost savings. I don't have an analysis of what that could look like. We're going to need to have more signage and efforts to direct people to the website and resources. So once this website is in a good place, we can start attracting people to it, and I can track how many people are using each of the each of the different sites with languages. Communication with community partners, I've been keeping them updated at every step throughout the process, making sure that they know where we're going. They've been able to provide their input and making sure that they're able to communicate with their clients and communities on it. We haven't gone through all of the translation of documents yet. It's been mainly website content, but we do have the ability to translate the documents that a department may produce. So let's say a planning document, our Tompkins County Comprehensive Plan, we have a section of that we'd like to translate. There will be an easier user interface where department staff could actually just drag that document into it, and then it would ping me, and I would decide the workflow to say this is critical public information, or this is machine translation, or what have you. And I have the budget information too, because if we translated all the documents on the website, it would be many, many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we're not going to do that. We're going to do it on the cases where we need to do it, and it makes the most sense. And then the budgeting for continued efforts. We budgeted last year and this year based on the amount of content on the website. We will have done a majority of that, and in future years, it will, the amount that we need to do it will reduce because so much will have already been translated. Every year, the county budget's around $20,000. Typically, the county budget's around $20,000 for the language line and some document translations. We've not, to my knowledge, used that full $20,000 in the past, but we would certainly be in a case to do so where we're translating more content. And that is the presentation. I can go back to any slide if folks want or answer whatever questions, but that's what I have.
Great. That was excellent and thorough and very informative. Questions? Mike?
I agree. That was a great presentation. It's a great thing we're moving forward to. Hopefully, we're going to be encouraging folks to learn English. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, will there be links on these sites where they can get to ESL programs? And
there certainly are some areas on our site where those links are already exist, and some of those resources are recommended by some of our staff when folks are interacting with staff, especially if they're a new arrival to the community or something like that. But we can certainly make sure ESL opportunities are highlighted from any of our number of local partners who offer that. That's a great suggestion.
Thanks.
Rich?
Thanks for the presentation. And having been on the call with Bill, you were there, Lisa, and Dominic, there was an update on the asylum seekers, and it was really impressive to see the number of community organizations that were attending. This has certainly gotten lots of attention, and the work you're doing here dovetails with that really, really well, I think. I would just, at the risk of repeating myself from that call, but there were several people saying if refugees come here, and I think we're past that. I think they will come here. The question really is the numbers, and we can do this poorly or we can do it well. I think we're poised to do it really well, and frankly, I think we're probably being conservative in the numbers that we could receive here if we're doing it well. I raised the question whether New York City or New York State are doing any evaluation of the people sitting in New York to determine what their language skills are, their job skills, whether they're interested in, are they college ready? There's so many different opportunities we could place people into here. I talked to a local employer just last week who said he has 20 positions open, and these are not minimum wage jobs. These are skilled, they would train the people to be machinists. We could actually significantly improve our local economy by being forced forward here. And I hope we're thinking about this in a comprehensive way.
And one of the things I feel like you said that is manually translated is like employment opportunities?
Yes.
So.
Yep. Office of Employment and Training and selected HR pages are translated, are prioritized for translation.
I mean, I'd like to see New York City doing more than just reacting to a crisis by saying, where can they sit?
Yeah.
And also I picked on New York State and that they're treating it as this is not New York State moving these people, it's New York City. And I think that's a bit of a dodge. And I also hope that New York State is being as forceful as they possibly can with the waiting period for employment, because it's 180 days at least at a minimum, but then it generally extends well beyond that. And what you don't want to have is the people sitting around. If they're able to work and contribute to our community, that's what we want them to do. There was some discussion of how this can be accomplished on the federal level. Do you need Congress to actually amend things? Is there something the Biden administration could do as an executive order? I don't know, but I hope New York State is just screaming about this. If it has to happen on the congressional level, perhaps there's a compromise to be had that states that want to maintain the 180 days can, but if there's states like New York where there would be benefit to getting people working sooner, maybe there's a local federal option.
Yeah. Other thoughts or questions? Well, thank you, Dominic.
Thank you.
It's good to know that this is progressing, and I think it's a very valuable thing that we're spending money on for the community. Do you have any other updates for us at the moment?
Nothing additional, just to thank you to the legislature for updating the policy and for, making sure we have the resources to get work like that done. Thanks.
Yeah, great. All right, well, thank you. Are there any updates or reports from committee members today? Any other business before this committee? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all for being here.